Hey there everyone, welcome back to my channel, and today we're going to be talking Crystal Chronicles in our Countdown to Worlds deck for the 4th deck in our 5-deck series on Countdown to Worlds for Final Fantasy trading card game. Now before we get into the deck, don't forget to check out all of my social links below, including my Patreon, where you can get all of my stuff for early access, as well as a bunch of other bonuses, and my Discord channel where we're going to be chilling out and talking FFTCG, Final Fantasy mobile games, and all sorts of other stuff. Now I haven't played Crystal Chronicles Ring of Fates. It's one of the few Crystal Chronicles games, or few Final Fantasy games in general I haven't played, but I'd like to because I've seen a lot of stuff about this DS game online, but I wanted to build a deck on it because the Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles engine that's been released into Wind has been doing, getting a lot of hype and a lot of buzz, and I wanted to build a deck for you guys that kind of encapsulated that and used all the pieces in there to build a mono Wind deck that I think will do very, very well in the future. Now going into the forwards for this deck, and one of the things you'll notice about a lot of the cards in this deck is that you can get a lot of value super quickly because of so many different things that can activate all of your backups or activate characters in general. There's a lot of that going on in this deck, so I think you guys will really enjoy that. But I'm going to start off with Arc because one thing you'll notice that isn't in this deck is Maria, so I wanted to get a power boost from somewhere within the deck, and honestly Arc's activated ability is very, very useful in certain places, so I wanted to kind of make sure we had some sort of power booster in there. And then Chelinka is obviously one of the more potent parts of the deck, being part of the Crystal Chronicles engine, and honestly she's very, very good in and of herself. All she has to do is be present, and then she's dealing more damage, Yuri's dealing more damage, Alhanalem's dealing more damage, and then you can really wreak havoc with Chelinka and the rest of her friends and do a lot of damage. And she has an EX Burst Searcher in Illyria as well, which is also very handy. Ranger is one of the other aspects of this deck that I wanted to touch on, alongside a couple of the other cards in here. Not being able to be targeted by abilities can actually prove absolutely invaluable against a lot of decks. Certainly fire decks, lightning decks, water decks even. There's a lot of things that you can do a lot of damage with when it comes to damage to your opponent's strategies, at least, with cards that can't be targeted by abilities. So I wanted to put 2 Ranger in here. And then Y'shtola is a dead cert for any Wind deck. Honestly, if you're not running Y'shtola, you need a damn good reason why. And because she can't be hit by damage, she can cancel anything. She's just amazing. She's honestly one of the best cards to come out of Opus 5, and she's pretty much a staple in every Wind deck going. Balthier is one that I'm not sure a lot of other people would necessarily want to play, but I really like him in this deck because he has a lot of combo capabilities with Alhanalem. You also have, the potential to use it with Barbarecia as well, but I wanted to note on the fact that if you have Alhanalem and Balthier out, and you play an Echo on top of that, there's a lot of damage that can come from that, because you're going to get 2,000 damage from Alhanalem, 3 if it's with Chelinka, then you get Balthier, that's 2,000 more, and then you play Echo, and then you can activate Alhanalem and draw a card, and then that will activate Balthier naturally through his own ability, and then you'll get that damage again, and that's going to be 10,000 damage total, 8,000 without Chelinka, and that's really, really good. Barbarecia is just very, very strong in general. So I wanted to make sure there was at least 1 or 2 copies of her in here. Vata, I think, is mandatory for any mono Wind deck because he's essentially free. You can just activate all of your backups, and he's just very strong. Like, it's extraordinary value. Then Yuri, I've only gone for 2 copies of Yuri in here because I think that, having played around with Yuri a little bit, it's quite hard to justify 3 copies of him, because him being a light card that has no, in an element that has no way of discarding cards for value, you don't really get much out of having 3 Yuri. You just need to be really careful when you play him. Honestly, I would make sure you played Chelinka before you played Yuri, unless you had no other option. Though the ability that the fact that you can use Yuri's abilities the turn he comes out is really cool, and honestly, he's just, got a great synergy with a lot of things, and because you've got mono Wind in here, you can use his Dull and Freeze or draw a card abilities and then just reactivate the backups through other means. So you're going to get a lot of value out of Yuri in this deck. So you could happily run 3 if you wanted to. I just found 3 to be a little bit cloggy. Zidane, honestly, is one of the scariest turn 1 plays you can make in this game. I've done it numerous times when I've played Wind Earth and this deck, where you just, turn 1, you just throw Caution to the Wind, play a Zidane down. If you're against water, don't do it, because you're gonna run into a Fanfrit, most likely. Turn 1, unit, Fanfrit, and then you've just pretty much given your opponent the game. But he can be really scary turn 1, and honestly at any point over the course of the game, he's yet another character that can't be targeted by abilities. He activates cards, he just synergizes with everything in this deck, honestly. And then Bart's and Cecil. Bart's goes without saying, for very similar reasons to Vata, except he has the bonus of being 9k and having EX Burst on top of him. Cecil, honestly, I think he's one of the best cards to come out recent times to counter any of the metas that we've had previously. He's, at worst, a 3 CP 8k guy. He has an EX burst on him that's useful. His ability when you hit 5 damage or more makes him an absolute monstrosity, because naturally, with no other means, he's 10,000 power and can't be hit by abilities. The only thing that's going to realistically get rid of him with ease is going to be either Famfrit, which honestly you've got loads of forwards in here, you shouldn't be getting hit by Famfrit at that point in the game, or Diablos. So there's a lot, he's just really, really big and very hard to get off the board. So honestly, I wanted to make sure that there were at least 2 copies of him in here. I don't think 3 is necessary because he is very much a late game play, but if you wanted the extra EX burst, you could if you wanted to. Then going into the backups, Alhanalem obviously goes in with Yuri and Chelinka for obvious reasons. I've tried to make it so that you can get away with only having Yuri or Chelinka, so you use the first ability more. But obviously if you have both of them, then the second ability is going to do some really nasty things as well. And then Archer, I've gone for 1 copy in here. Archer has slowed down in its use over the last couple of sets because it is quite a slow card and your opponent can see it coming. But I think with cards like Snow, not Snow because he's 4 CP, with things like Fusoya, Minwoo would be a big problem for this deck because you would do a lot of chip damage, so if people are starting to play that again then you want to be able to deal with that. There's a lot of smaller things that you want to be able to deal with, but I think that trying to push that too heavily in that direction is probably not a good idea. Riku poses as an alternate win condition in this deck because of the ability to discard the top cards of your opponent's deck and the fact that you can reactivate your backups so frequently that you can really make use of Riku's mill effect at its maximum potential. Thief I wanted 1 copy of in here because you're not always going to have Zidane, and being able to have a backup that's easily breakable for a worthwhile effect is really important in here. The reason I haven't run Maria in this deck is because there are too many backups in the deck that stick and don't break themselves. That honestly I was struggling to figure out which one to take out in order to make room for her, and I didn't feel I needed Maria as much as I needed to have Illyria, Echo, Aerith, Riku or Alhanalem, and that's your 5. So that's something to bear in mind for deck building in general. Try to picture what your final board wants to look like with your backups. So if you've got 5 backups that don't break themselves, then try to make sure that everything else does so that you don't end up with completely dead cards in your hand. So I went with a Thief because it works well with Chaos Walk of the Wheel. It allows you to see whether it's safe to use Chaos as well as Zidane. So I wanted to see if, you know, make Chaos as usable as possible. Aerith I think is actually quite important at the moment. I've gone for 2 copies of Opus 1 Aerith and 1 copy of Opus 3 Aerith, but honestly if you wanted to you could drop the Opus 3 Aerith entirely and just run 3 copies of the Opus 1 one because it's a free backup, you can use an ability on a backup and then reuse it. It's just useful to have, and Planet Protector has always been useful, just not even necessarily because of the use but the threat of it. So your opponent's going to be a little, if you leave an Aerith up then your opponent's going to be a little bit more hesitant to use things against you. Illyria is obvious, it's an EX burst searcher for 2 of the main characters of the deck. Echo does so much in this deck, it's crazy, and honestly I like Echo anyway. I think that the variety of things you can do with it, anything in this game that has choose 2 of the following abilities tends to be really, really powerful, and Echo is no exception. It's a backup that can essentially be a 1 CP backup that allows you to, by activating a different backup and drawing a card, but it has options to do other things. It counters ice because it can activate your forwards. It allows you to reuse things like Alhanalem because you can reactivate your backups. It's just good, and I really like it. So I've gone for 3 copies in here, and the EX burst is so valuable, it's crazy. And then Lesaford is a card that I was always very hesitant to run, but honestly I think the fact that you've got, because it's mono wind, you're always going to hit something. So it's great to be able to get that much value out of it, and having it so that you can break Joesephyr so that your next damage you take for a forward is 0 is actually really useful as well, because you want to keep Yuri and Chelinka alive for as long as possible. And then going into the summons, 1 copy of Alexander is in here. To be honest, I actually really like Hope and Alexander as an engine, but I couldn't find room to put Hope in the deck. But I quite like the idea of being able to sort of just continuously draw cards and things like that. But there's also no monster hate in this deck, so I wanted to have a copy of Alexander and a method of being able to reactivate Alhanalem or Riku if I needed to. Asura is in here because I wanted ways of protecting Yuri and Chelinka. I don't think Asura is the most necessary back summoning this deck. If anything, you could drop it for more forwards if you wanted to, or you could drop it for another Alexander and then find room for Hope if you wanted to, because then you can reactivate Yuri and start using him more, or you could have another way of reactivating your Balthier. Chaos Walker of the Wheel is a dead cert, because it's certainly with Zidane in the deck, and then the Thief as well, just to give that little extra edge to it. I think that it's just straight removal, and the number of decks that go quite aggro and sort of drop their own hand, it's really useful in general. And then Diablos, it just is great. The amount of things you can do with Diablos is horrendous. And then the last card I did want to touch on, because I didn't actually mention it during my backup lineup, is White Mage. Now, I actually really enjoy White Mage at the moment because of the amount of people running water for Viking. Now, a lot of people tend to drop Viking turn 1 if they have it in their hand, ready for Layla to pick up later. And you can drop if they do that, you can drop a White Mage, get rid of it, and then you've pretty much scuppered your opponent's entire strategy. But not only that, but because it can do it again, you can use it in response to things like Phoenix, you can use it in response to Layla, you can use it in response to Devout, you can use it in response to a lot of different things. Interaction with the break zone has become really popular in the last few sets, so I don't see why you being able to interact with your opponent's break zone is a bad thing either. I also like the fact that it can break itself at will. Like, if you don't need it anymore, if you've got 4 backups in it and you want to make room for that 5th backup that doesn't break, then you can do that. And I just think that it's a great card. Honestly, if you haven't tried White Mage, I would very heavily suggest experimenting with it. So the general game plan with this is just to accumulate your board as quickly as you physically can. If you do manage to get Alhanalem, Yuri, Chelinka, you're pretty much going in hard. If you get Balthier on top of that, then the damage you're going to rack up is going to be ridiculous. And the fact that Chelinka and Yuri can do its break effect on party attack, I wouldn't rely on that because it's quite rare that you'll get it, just to pre-warn you. But because you've got loads of ways of protecting yourself. You've got Ishtola, Ranger, Zidane, Cecil late game, you've got Asura, you've got loads of ways of pushing forward. You've got Chaos, Diablos, Balthier, Barbarecia, you've got your value plays, you've got Cecil again, Bart, Vata. There's loads of really strong value plays, and that's what you're trying to do. For those of you who ever played Magic the Gathering, this is very green. Like, you just want your guys out as quickly as possible and as valuable as possible, and just push forward with that game plan. But anyways, thank you very much for watching. That's going to be it for this video today. We've got 1 deck left, which is going to be posted tomorrow, which is the day before Worlds. I'll actually probably already be at Worlds by the time that video goes out, so hopefully you guys have enjoyed this series, and I will leave that one last video for you, and hopefully you guys will enjoy that as well. Don't forget to check all of my social links in the description box below. Comment on any of the decks that you've seen this week and see which ones you like, which ones you want to play for yourself. Whether you really hate them all and you just want to read me to filth, then that's fine too. And hopefully I will see you guys this weekend at Worlds. Don't forget to check out Square Enix's official Twitch channel if you want to come and watch that. Thanks again, guys. I'll speak to you guys soon. See you later.